Hey, Ray, you're the only one at the meeting.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, thanks, Caitlin. Welcome to anybody who's online. Sorry, we're running just a couple of minutes late, but this afternoon now we're going into a workshop to talk about untreated drinking water supply options. And with us we have Denise and Anika. So Denise, you will head this off?
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. And would you like to take questions as you go, or at the end of it, how would you like to do that?
Probably I would like to run through the presentation slides, but if there are any comments and
Go through the slides first.
I can take questions, but there's a room at the end too.
Okay, so we'll have questions at the end. So, okay, thanks very much. Over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors, mayor, and all the SLT members and everyone. So today we are here for the workshop for the three of the untreated water supply for the Buller, namely Waimangaroa, Mokenui, and Little Wanganui. So we are talking about these particular three supplies. The workshop purpose is not to make a commitment on the final construction of the registration today, but we are wanting to give more, provide the update in relation to regulatory and operational context and some of the multi-criteria analysis work that we and our partner consultant Becca has done to work on the next step, and also give you the ideas on what are the preferred solutions that is available on the table. So a bit of a background here. I think in past as well, there has been few intention in terms of what we'll do with this treatment or in terms of treatment plants, or what are we going to do with this water supply. So Waimangaroa had a tender that went out, which was very high than what was priced for. Similarly for Little Wanganui, some attempts were
sorry to interrupt, but we've got a member of the public here with us. Don't know how well he can hear you, but he certainly can't see that screen. We might like to position him. Would you like to come forward so you can see the presentation? The media aren't here, so
no.
yeah, okay.
Thanks.
So cool. Thank you for that. And so I think numerous attempts has been made in the past, but I think the key issue here, I think now, is the regulatory expectation for all this drinking water supply. Basically, there is a requirement of multi-barrier approach in terms of both bacterial and protozoal, plus even residual disinfection. So this is a lot more regulatory and compulsory sort of requirement that is in there. And hence what I think today we want to get that overview of the constraints and options, and basically considering the funding and what are the next steps, especially in terms of consultation and multi-party stakeholders approval required. And also the key to notice status quo, especially the boiling water notice, and all those options are not available. So we really have to meet the requirement as per TAMATA ROI, which is in this slide. Basically, a few acts are there, as you can see in there. And then basically stating multi-barrier approach, that meaning the treatment has to be done. And there are a few options. Some of those are conventional council supply of having centralized treatment system, so that multi-barrier is there, which is more expensive. But also in-point treatment are one of the acceptable solution that TAMATA recently did for the less than 500 people supply, which is a little bit more cheaper option, which we'll delve into a little bit in detail on more future slides. So some of the supplies, again, going into a little bit detail, summarizing where we are at the moment with those particular supplies, and there are a few slides related to the options, the next step options. Starting with Waimangaroa, it's the biggest out of the three supplies that we're talking today. 139 connection. The source is from two surface water intake mainly. Mostly, I think the commonality on all these three supplies, and you can see is there. I think the turbidity, the tannins, and variability in terms of how the source behaves, especially after heavy rainfall, is a very common problem. And also we don't have a effective storage facility to make this work. The second supply is Mokuinui, which again has a 2 surface water intakes, similar sort of like quality, especially water quality has always been an issue. I think some of the I think key notes that residents has made to us is I think they have been maintaining mostly the small and minor maintenance, and whereas whenever there is a bigger capital or some minor capital involved, I think BDC and our contractor has helped them. Most of the permanent resident also have the roof storage tank, but those batches and holiday homes might or don't have it. And I think this is one of those, I think out of Waimangaroa, Little Wangine, Mokini, this is the one where a little bit of commercial I think apart from residential or commercial spaces are also available, like campgrounds and all those things. And under the rule, I think this has to be treated separately, the commercial versus residential. So Little Wangine is most of the similar sort of surface source, but I think one of the key issue there is I think the source is at a very vulnerable hillside location, very hard for maintenance and getting in there and those side of the thing. Again, probably a lot of the time resident has mentioned about how quickly the quality changes, which affects the turbidity, tannins, and the quality of the water. And the whole purpose here is about the effective treatment. And so all these 3 sources. Now, I think the next slide will talk about the options. So those are where we are at and what the source is about. This is one of the criteria.
Ganesh, you got a question from Tony there?
Let's go back a bit. What do you think of storage tanks up there? A couple of tanks up there, after all that work, they did.
Oh, sorry, Tony. Yeah, thanks.
They have.
Yeah, there are
tanks.
there are some tanks, but they don't last a particularly long period of time. Not the period of time that would be required for the water to get the water clear to be taken again.
So all that work and money, and it still really is untreated and not fit to drink.
Yeah,
No, yeah, I know that, but it's a lot of money for anyway. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought there's little tanks to control the turbidity. Isn't that what they had the tanks up there?
They hold water in a small, very small reservoir. But if you're talking about extended periods of rainfall and the water's constantly filthy. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you. So these are the recommended options which our consulting partner Baker helped us on developing. So we look onto the in-point treatment, conventional, non-conventional, and seeds to supply. As I said earlier, in-point treatment is generally simple one where a card is filtered and UV treatment at its property will be done. Conventional is a little bit more centralized treatment, and we'll also have a residual chlorine treatment.
It's just with the Mokanui supply, when are we going to start taking account of the ratepayer submissions to the annual plan where they wanted it close as a potable supply?
I think that's a separate question.
Yeah, so I think
Finance.
probably in terms of, so the study was underway prior to those submissions coming in. What this outcome does is actually supports the residents' request. So it's actually been quite a useful review for them. So we've actually got now we have technical evidence that back up the residents' request as well. So that would be really helpful when we come to justifying a discontinuation of that supply.
I'll just check with Denise again because we were going to take questions at the end.
Yeah, that's fine, but still happy to answer some of those.
Continuation of the Mokanui. I understand there's a report going like this month to Mokanui as to what they need to do for ceasing their, or the options for ceasing their supply.
No. I'm not aware of any report going to Mokanui this month.
I'll do some more work on that.
Yeah, so I'll be able to answer about that. I think we've got some next steps, and we have met Tamata ROI because they are the regulator to let us know what will be the next step, but that'll be one of the step. So yeah, getting back to this option, so conventional with the residual chlorine treatment and storage available, non-conventional centralized treatment, but we'll have no storage, and we'll be using chlorine dioxide gas instead of a residual chlorine, which is a point to be noted. There is chlorine dioxide at the moment is not acceptable. So it will be case by case. It's not a acceptable chlorine treatment. And henceforth, there's a lot of the time, if we go with non-conventional, which is cheaper than conventional, but it will be, again, accessed by Talmata ROI as acceptable solution on case by case. And seeds to supply, meaning rainwater tank, UV card, is multiple options are there. And in the screen, you can see for each supply, the green means the best possible option. That is
Just a question around that, like around Little Wanganui, which it's recommending rainwater tanks, UV and cartridge. So what happens for properties, or do we know that every property can fit a rainwater tank on site? Because I know that was an issue when we'd looked at it in the past, that properties don't have the space for rainwater tanks. So is that something we know, that properties do have space for rainwater tanks?
So that will have to be I think the next step you'll understand. I think at the moment it is at that initial stage, so we haven't gone to that stage. But
Okay.
if we decide with the seeds to supply, let's say, or that is the option, then one of the assessment is each individual property has to be accessed if the rainwater tank is the feasible option, or it'll be other. So we have to access that. But at the moment, we haven't gone into that property individual level. But your comments are valid, and we know there are some properties that might be.
So a follow-up question then, Dinesh, is does this work have to be done before we go to Coast Waters next year? Do we have to have this kind of very clear as to what's got to happen before it gets transferred to Coast Waters?
Yes,
I can answer that. So
Yeah.
I suppose if we go back a little while, one of the reasons why these specific catchments don't have an answer yet was we were waiting for Tamata ROI to come up with what their acceptable solutions would be. They'd given an indication, quite a strong indication, that endpoint treatment was going to be okay, but it wasn't until a few months ago that they actually formally confirmed that that would be okay. We set our LTP, or modified LTP, on the assumption that that would be okay, but we couldn't do that work until it was confirmed. So Coast Waters will inherit anything that we're not able to do over the next 8 to 10 months, but it would be preferable to give them a very clear steer to say this is the outcome that's going to move forward. And I think this report gives some pretty clear direction for council in terms of where it might want to go. Coast Waters could, I can't imagine they could take a different view, but that's highly unlikely.
Rosa, here's a question.
So with Little Wanganui, and I'm fairly certain most properties have that room for a tank. So with the availability of having a tank, would they not break away from Coast Waters and go alone, like Mokanui want to do?
Yeah, and that's one of the recommended option for the Little one is the seeds to supply. And some of these answers probably in the next step, I think, about how it will integrate with the Coast Waters, and I've got a flow map that will sort of explain it a little bit better.
Yeah, however, for the likes of Little Wanganui, they have a sewage treatment system which does link them into Coast Waters. So they don't completely get separate from Coast Waters, but if there's no effectively town supply, as it were, then they don't pay a water charge, but they would still pay the wastewater charge and whatever stormwater costs.
Exactly, because at this stage, I don't know what has been done to secure their intake site.
Oh, no, I can wait.
So in this slide, again, there is a very detailed slide you'll be provided. There are supporting slides which goes into the way how we got there, but this is really a summary slide to say green are our preferred option on each of the individual supply. And all of this comes with some sort of cost. Then again, compliance, there's a balance that needs to be met. I think, and that's why we also allowed, okay, green is a preferred, probably if that is not affordable or for some reason with the legal, political complexity or even community acceptance, if we have to consider something else, then there are this orange one, which is a secondary, and then red is almost not recommended due to either being very costly or just non-compliance issues still occur. Then what's the point of going with very expensive option when that doesn't occur? So Waimangaroa, the preferred is conventional central treatment option, again subject to affordability. But there are other options like seeds to supply or into point that could be considered if the conventional option doesn't go ahead with. Mokuinui sort of liaises with the council's annual plan resolution that was made for not continuing with any more of those drinking water standard works, which means then cease to supply is a preferred, and then if it doesn't work, then we have that conventional option, but the cost is very high for what we can get. So I think cease to supply is still preferred. We couldn't do endpoint and non-conventional multi-criteria analysis for Mokinui due to the water quality. It doesn't just work. So we had to only go with those two options were the available one. A little Wanganui is and cease to supply was the preferred. I think we know that there are quite a few community acceptance and probably legal and political challenges that will arise. The henceforth conventional also is an option there, but again the cost is too high for the return on investment for the small population based, and then those other endpoint treatment at unconventional basically due to the non-compliances is going to be very hard to achieve. So outcome here is I think we really need to have a safe and compliant and affordable pathway for each untreated supply. So we just are working on through these options, and this is what we have got to the date. And I think I'll explain a little bit on the next step on how we can further develop it and what are the processes, and still there's a two-way next step option. So basically, I think we have got a few next step summary and this one. So first is more still we need evidence and engagement on all of this supply. So a key there is Tamata ROI. They are monthly reported by our consultant partner Becca on what is happening, where we are at with on our progress. And I think we still need to continue. I think probably getting our water quality, demand constraints, resilience, and also the cost has to be a little bit more streamlined as well. At the moment, all of these are at a high level, so we get a little bit more better understanding, and those green reds are a lot more accurate, and we can be really confirming those facts. And I think we have just the preferred option and for our affordability and what does it mean for customer. And we have already started the Mokuinui progressing for the seeds to supply. We've started the chats with the Tamata ROI.
So just everyone and the rovers from Mokanui, we did have a public meeting. Council asked the chair of Brandon Committee to go away and ask the community a whole lot of questions and concerns. That has been done. Those questions and concerns have been delivered to Anthony and Brent. They are going to go away and look at all any new information from the water regulator, and then we're going to organise a small party meeting before a main community meeting in October. The issue with Mokanui is that most people live in batches. They only come in the whiteface season. And I think from what I heard, you need up to 75% of people on board in the community if you want to disestablish. Is that still correct?
I understand that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So we need to get as many people engaged in the decision making as we can, and that's going to be happening hopefully in October.
Thank you for the conversation.
Sorry, can I just ask a question around Mokanui? So the camping ground at Mokanui, they would have to have their own supply tanks, or do they already have their own water tanks? What happens there?
So Mokanui have had their own tanks for many, many years, and they don't drink the water there. They had in the kitchen, they had a small tap, but they had to have a sign saying boil water. But pretty much the whole camp, all the taps and all the rooms are being run off water tanks. We have 5 30,000 litre tanks there. We are going to plan on buying another one, and the town supply has only been used for like 4 old loos.
So Dinesh, I have a question then around Taumata. Otherwise, their quality of water around something like a commercial entity, like a motor camp, is it higher than what's required in residential?
There definitely are different, I actually don't know.
I think it's
on the
something
level,
that
but
we
there are
need to find
different,
out about.
residential and commercial are certainly treated different. And I
Yeah.
think due to the fact that we are serving more people and things, so the quality and numbers are different, which I think probably will be accounting as a result of next step. But yeah, there are
Yeah.
differences in how we treat residential and commercial.
Yeah, so because that's our motor camp,
Yeah.
there's a risk to us as Buller District Council, so we do need to clarify what is
Yeah.
required at our motor camps.
And henceforth, those are the steps that will taken on the evidence and engagement. Because if you see the next slide is then only the decisions and delivery happen. So that's why we put it into a little
Yeah.
bit 2 separate process rather than trying to do decision and while trying to get the facts on the same time. I think that's
Yeah.
why it has to be, we need to get all this evidence collection and engagement done right. So that will help us to get the decisions and delivery done correctly and also hand it over to coast waters and to town with RI with the proper accurate details. Grace. Grace.
Just a little bit that may help. The motor camp at Karamea has got compliant water, and that goes through a system, and so does the bowling club, and both of those are commercial. So I would imagine that you can get the compliant system. Yeah.
So I suppose the beauty of Mokanui is that we have a whole lot of stuff there. It's very small. We've got really good community engagement. So it's going to be a good wee test case for, any other small, which is great. And I know that there is some UV filters on the camp that is actually compliant drinking water supply. But also it'd be great to learn more about it to be really compliant and on all the new rules around say campgrounds and drinking water. Yeah, it'd be good to sort of tidy up in that department.
Yep, and I think, on this evidence and engagement stage as we go on, one of the key engagement is also that governance and handover plan for the coast waters, because all the works and delivery will transfer to the new entity on the 1st of July. So that is also a part of work that will be done through these steps. Again, I think before any detailed design, construction, or deed registration, council will get that evidence and more direction, pathways, and sequencing will be provided a little bit more once we get that even better understood. And so the decisions and delivery is ultimately the basically the last step. So once we have our engagements, our support, or any sort of feedback needed, and data and more validation of our multi-criteria analysis is done, I think we'll be able to confirm that with the Taumata ROI through our regular reporting, and BEC are assisting us with that, with the very regular input and close monitoring by our staff as well. And then that will go into the funding and consultation approach through either LTP or separate consultation. Again, at this stage, we had to put that at a high level because we don't know when that will occur and at which month and which time. So it will go through that. And ultimately bring that governance and handover with the coast waters in one way or other has to happen. And then council's direction on detailed design, delivery, registration process will be updated as well as we go on. There's this flow chart probably that was developed after, so it's pretty much a summary of what I said earlier, engagement and then decision. But but I think this is more also very relevant for especially Mokuinui. Once that annual plan resolution was adopted, we spoke with them. They also gave us some example of the district councils around in the country that had to go through similar process or are almost about to close that process. So I got I was fortunate enough to talk to a few of the other district councils manager to understand how it has been working for them. And this is sort of the step that similar to that, getting the MCA done, transition concept, but then property by property feasibility, public health, community engagement, and all those feedbacks needs to be there. And then only it can go to the council back again for the implementation plan. And we need to verify, install the safe system and all those things until the formal proper the registration can happen. So there's a lot of engagement, validation, and decision delivery needs to be done before we do all this closure, and even post-transition support and asset closure needs to be a clear plan set up there. Yeah, so this is basically the summary of the next step, but also works very well for Mokuinui because this was the advice we received from the industry expert, other councils, TAMAC, ROI. So that sort of summarizes the overall presentations that I have got. I think when we will be provided with the slides there, I think the details on its multi-criteria analysis, if you want to deep dive into it. But I think probably more now open to questions and discussions.
Yeah, thanks, Dinesh. Look, clearly we've just been speaking of 3 suppliers here this afternoon, but we have others, and I guess that's why we've got a member of the public here. What happens to those other suppliers, untreated suppliers, when water done well, low coast waters comes into being?
So I think answer will be similar next step. I think this one was for the just 3. I think we at the moment are required by Tamata ROI, and also when the handover plan is made to the transition to the new coast waters, we have to do the assessment for all the water supplies in the district. So so that will be done as a similar way. We haven't quite gone and done that detailed exercise yet, but we'll have to look onto the every supply in the district and do the similar process. So at the moment, short answer is we'll have to follow the similar sort of process.
So yet to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. He said qualified to go through a lot of information relatively quickly. I'm just trying to get my head around how we're going to pay for it. So this question is also for the more experienced council, and I like the options that you presented, especially the green ones. And I'm looking now at the rainwater tanks plus UV plus carpet filtration in each property, meter requirements, supports the community, and I'm just wondering about, do we provide any assistance council for those rainwater tanks? Are we going to provide rainwater tanks or discount some sort of finance arrangements? And what's our ongoing liability to sustain the filters, the inspection, all that sort of thing? How do we look at costing that in the future and long term?
So I think the answer here, and Tamat ROI, when we spoke to them a little while ago, it was basically, and we talked specifically around Mokanui at the time, it was if there is a property which has no other water supply, you can't just leave them high and dry. So there's a responsibility to ensure that they do have some sort of ability to collect rainwater, and that could be that they install their own tanks, or there's an acceptably agreed solution with perhaps a neighbour to share water, and that would work if you've got a property that didn't have room for tanks. So there are a number of options there. At the end of the day, council can't leave people high and dry, so we won't, and we'd be required to make sure that they do have a supply that is adequate for them.
Yeah, so I mean, my question remains is that the council's experience, you just described existing rainwater tanks. My question is more revolving around, for those ones that don't have rainwater tanks or have rainwater tanks that need to be replaced, and we're now advocating, are we going to provide them any assistance to set themselves up, and then what's our responsibilities for sustaining them?
Well, I guess that question would have to, come back to council by way of recommendation.
Sure, no, I get that. I'm just sort of trying to get an idea about what the council thinks.
Yeah.
What we've done in the past and what we are looking at is, because ultimately, probably the decision might not rest with us. It'll rest with the new council, the local water. So, I should put forward some sort of idea about it, how we're going to fund it.
I mean, there's two parts to your question. One is what do we do to make sure they actually have water, and then the next part is ongoing maintenance and such like. So, as I said, we cannot just leave somebody high and dry, so we have to support them in whichever way we can to ensure that they have appropriate water, and that could be the extreme of having to buy tanks and supply them to them. But there are other options as well, like shared resource and things like that. The ongoing maintenance is once, if we go down the disestablishing a water supply and each property having their own tanks, they, just like I do up the hill, I'm responsible for the maintenance and the treatment of that water, because then they become individuals and aren't covered by the water rules. So the recommendation is put in a triple filter, put in your UV, do all of that sort of stuff, so as you can actually get the cleanest water. But if they choose not to, we have no liability with that, is the advice I've been given.
So, and we're going to work with the community to make sure that they've got rainwater tanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We cannot leave people without water.
Shane and then Rosalie.
I just wondered if anyone, like the rates assistance scheme that's now coming into law, is, is that something that we could talk to LG&Z about, whether that could be a funding pathway for ratepayers to actually get money from the rates assistance scheme, which then just goes against the value of their house. It's
Yeah, but I think unless I'm wrong, that's specifically designed for council rates. It's
no. And the discussion where it was presented at the Zone 5 and 6 conference, they talked about solar panels. They talked about a whole lot of other stuff. And maybe initially it might be rates, but I think it's something that needs to be maybe discussed with LG&Z around because we won't be the only place in New Zealand that's going to be installing water tanks and where people have to have them.
Yeah. I think just in terms of, I suppose, my understanding of this is we would have a project for a particular community, Mokanui, for example, where we have to do a number of steps. One of those steps is to ensure that everybody has water supply, but there will be some hard engineering like disconnecting pipes and all sorts of things. So there will be a cost, so there'll be a project. And that cost of that project would likely sit in that rating area to make sure that that community is covered. So the community want to disestablish. Poor old Mrs. Smith over here needs some support, then the community would actually be expected to support it. Now that's a political decision, not my decision.
It's still a rate, a set cost to that
still
property,
a cost.
no matter how it is.
It's a cost to that community because the project that we have to do, which requires doing A, B, C, X, Y, Z and supplying a tank here, is a community cost to do that action that the community want.
Yeah, but we still rate the community.
Yes, we rate the community.
So they will still have to pay for it in one way or another. Yes. And so therefore, it's something that I think we need to investigate is that rates assistance schemes, whether there is that option to look at water.
But just to be mindful, the costs in here, we are actively looking at the projected future costs for these communities, some of which were quite exorbitant, and going, how do we minimize those costs by doing something today to ensure, firstly, compliance, and secondly, making sure that everyone has some.
No difference to a rates assistance scheme, which looks into rates into the future where people are getting older, their income's becoming less, and that's why it's been put in place. So for me, I think it should be something that we at least are discussing with whoever, LG&Z or something.
Well, I'm particularly interested, given that scheme that's coming in, how it sort of rolls out with West Coast Water taking care of a whole lot of stuff, and and the councils in isolation too. Is there going to be a divvy up, or I don't know what the answer to that is. Do you know,
Any questions related to rates? I'll put to my lovely assistant, Leslie.
Well, the thing is, West Coast Waters, correct me if I'm wrong, but West Coast Waters is going to end up rating, for what they did, correct?
Yes.
So therefore, whatever rates,
Coast Waters charge, so it's not a rating. It's.
oh, we see,
That's
that's
the
even
difference.
wrinklier, isn't it?
That's the subtle difference.
That's even more of a wrinkle, because if Coast Waters are making a charge rather than striking a rate, what Shane's bringing up is rate relief under the government's new legislation. So I don't profess to understand it, but it's a bit of a wrinkle that we need to understand, because people who think they might get a certain amount of relief, given the amount of rates that they pay, all of the water's going to be taken out, it's going to be a charge. I don't know the answer.
But it might be that they get their rates for nothing. I mean, not for nothing, that they go down the rating assistance scheme.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so look, call me
Sorry.
naive if you like, as many will. I struggle to see how you say this will become a cost on the community. If the option to cease to be a supplier, but to do that is a cost, a few tanks for a few people, do we pay for it? But we won't be a water supplier, so therefore we can't be recovered through a water supply rate, because we're not a water supplier. So
The issue is we would cease to become a water supplier once we had completed the transition to a new water supplier, even if that is individual households supplying themselves. So until that project is complete, we become the water supplier, and then that gets handed over. So we can't get rid of our responsibility until we have ensured that every property has an adequate water supply. So it's, yes, we still are until that point, which means there's a fund, which means there's a rate.
so what if 90% of them we no longer supply them to, but they're the outliers and we have the obligation, so we help them. But in the meantime, the other 90%, are we going to rate them to help that other 10%?
when you've got all this worked out, Anthony, can you come back to us? We'll give Leslie, Leslie, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot about the ratepayer assistance scheme, but what it does say is that it's designed to let you spread out heavy upfront costs like development contributions, property improvements, solar panels, or rates postponement via low interest long-term loans. So it doesn't specifically say anything about water. So I think it's something that has to be looked, yeah.
Well, just to carry on that point, when that guy from DIA, or whatever they call him now, when he was here, he said that the water services had a higher rating than rating, and that rate could go on a person's property. And he did say that for the water rate. But then in all of this confusion, I think I heard you say, Anthony, that the water services don't strike the rate.
So the water company, Coast Waters, will have the ability to charge, which is legally different from a rate.
Okay.
So it is very different. It's like your power company charges you because it's an independent company.
Okay. I won't say that I understand, but the question I was going to ask is, so when do we feel that we will be in a position to go to both Mokanui and Little Wanganui with options then? Please.
Probably for that one, I think the key steps are, I think that's the next step. So I think that engagement and then gathering the evidence is as option. So I think next couple of months is our priority to get that done. So we'll put it in a bit more definitive timeline and process as we have that implementation timeline that we got. And I think so. Short answer is probably next couple of months is when that will be starting to happen.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, well, so I'm kind of working through that with the head of the Ratepayers Association, Tony McNabb. He sent the question through to council. So that has been done. So they're just waiting on you guys to answer the questions and set a date, an interim date between now and October to answer their few questions that they were asked to go away and find out. So council just need to come back to me and Tony McNabb around when you're going to set that date to meet in person with a small amount of ratepayers, so you can start those conversations and planning for their big public meeting in October.
Shane.
This is just a comment for Simon and Anthony. So you're meeting with Coast Waters on Monday, workshopping? Yeah. So what I would say to you is, and we've had this conversation with Teresa many times, is the lack of understanding around rating or charging or whatever, that if we have a lack of understanding at this table, and I've been going to the meetings and you haven't, but I have, and I still don't really understand the charging, whether it's a rate or a charge. Our communities have no understanding, you know, like it's, so I guess what I'm saying to you is they need to start sorting information, start communicating with our communities, because if they can't leave it until, you know, we're starting to transfer assets. It's just that the whole charging side of it, the transfer of assets, they need to start communicating now some of the stuff, because otherwise you guys are going to wear the brunt of it, and it shouldn't be that way. We're going to be asked questions and we don't fully understand the answers right now, and so we do need some clarity.
I think
So just to be,
I followed that up with Therese.
Yeah.
I think it was last week, was it? In terms of the communication, she hasn't come back to me yet. But you know, Coast Waters now needs to take a bit of a step up.
Yeah, it just highlights that you know, the lack of.
there is definitely a comms and engagement work stream that is underway. And the Coast Waters process is enormous. And now that they have gotten over the political board appointment side of things, they can now actually get into some of the really meaty stuff. And comms and engagement is a very clear work stream that we were talking about at our get together yesterday. So that's understood. The example that occurred in Wellington is a poignant lesson probably of how not to communicate with your communities, because the Wellington community just did not in general understand what was happening and who their new water entity was, or what they were doing, or why they were being charged. So we have seen that, we have learned those lessons, and engaging with the community is critical. And we do know that not a lot of people know what Coast Waters is.
Rosa.
Yeah, I've been hearing the Three Waters, water done well for probably the last 3 years, and we're going to get some information, just like Shane. Still no, but the question is, if Mokanui and Little Wanganui choose to go alone and it's not completed by 26th of July, will they get put over to the new entity and then have to come back out of it? Or will the fact that it's in process of being disestablished or deregistered, whatever, that can remain within the account, a water account within the district council?
So all council's assets and liabilities and all their funds and all the projects transfer to Coast Waters on the 1st of July 2027. So anything that's incomplete becomes a Coast Waters project. So Coast Waters would complete anything that is incomplete.
So therefore we need to speed things up to make sure that we have everything tidied up, all done.
Yep,
So
and also one of the things to note here is a lot of these agreement or, the process that we follow through. Taumata are also involved. So something that even if it get handed over to, the new entity, I think Taumata are gonna, account us for that. So a lot of this decision making and things won't be lost, but I agree if we can and do it in as least possible abruptive way to the community and an affordable way. Our plan is that and aim is to achieve that.
Yeah, we just can't possibly hand it over because it's a mare's nest now.
Yeah.
And we'll have a mare's nest plus if we try to hand it over to sign it off.
Thanks, Rosalie. Any further questions? Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, Tanisha. Tanika. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Very informative. Thank you to anybody online who's been watching. And to start, we'll close the workshop. It's been an afternoon, hasn't it?